Hello everybody and welcome to the Isolation Conversation with me, Mark Stokes, a series of videos designed to discuss all things digital whilst working remotely in isolation. Hello and welcome to the Isolation Conversation episode 9, Coming Out of Isolation. I'm joined by three fantastic guests today who can talk about how their organisations and their companies are coming out of lockdown. I'm here in the office performing a health and safety risk assessment today. As you can see, all my equipment's at home. I've got no monitors or anything on the desk here, so we need to plan properly for how we can bring employees back into the office. Or do we prefer not to bring them into the office, and what might new normal look like if we're going to take more of a hybrid approach? It's a very interesting conversation. I hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's dive right in. Hi everybody, thank you for joining us again today. I'm here with Rob, Andrew and Mark, and we're going to talk about coming out of isolation. Okay, so first of all, what we'll do, let's just go around the board and let's just do some quick introductions. So who you are, maybe who you work for, where you're located as well, because we've got a very international group today, and then we'll go on from there. Who wants to go first?
Crickets.
We'll start with the furthest away then.
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Mark Macrae. So I'm currently sat in Wellington, New Zealand. 6 o'clock in the morning here. So Mark sort of put me down the pecking order in terms of the suitable times, but I don't mind. Yeah, and I'm basically like a solution architect for a Microsoft partner here, and yeah, recently moved out to New Zealand. Probably came out. It's getting on for 2.5 years now. Originally from London, England.
Yeah, that's your punishment for leaving us and going to New Zealand. That I made you get out of bed at 6 in the morning.
No, it's fine. It gets me up and ready for the day, so it's all good.
Yeah. Rob, do you want to go next?
Follow the sun. Yeah, I can go next. Absolutely, yeah. So I'm Rob Foster. I am based in Nashville, Tennessee, in the U.S. So it's getting quite hot here now. Yesterday was about 37 degrees or so it's warming up here pretty good. I don't know. I'm assuming it's going into winter in New Zealand, but in
yeah,
UK it's much colder. But I work for Deloitte. I've been here for about 16 years. Pretty much lead the admin side of everything collaboration. So things like Office 365, so Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, blah, 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 and all the other collaboration tools that our internal employees use across the board, which is about, right now we're looking at about 400,000 people. So it's a pretty big footprint.
Absolutely. Is that all employee-based or contractor-based or a combination of both?
It's a combination.
Employees.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. Mostly internal employees, though. But we bring our contractors on. So if you're working as a contractor at Deloitte, you're not treated any differently, right? You just don't get benefits, right? So, but yeah, so you get the same. We issue you a laptop, you get the same storage space on OneDrive. You get all the stuff that we would have, as an employee, you would have there, just an hourly worker rather than a full-time employee.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do, after Andrew's done the introduction, we'll go on and just talk about the effects and the impacts. We spoke about it previously going into lockdown, but it'd be interesting to see how your journey has gone up to where we are now. So then, so Andrew, do you want to? So we've kicked Andrew kicking and screaming back into the community. The people who've been around for a while will definitely remember him as one of the better presenters in my experience. And, so we've kicked him and brought him back in. So Andrew, remind people who you are.
Yeah. Andrew Woodward. I think I retired being an MVP. I handed my notice in and said I don't want to do this anymore. About 7 years ago, probably. And I went to work permanently for Zurich. Right? So I sort of got out of the community game, went internally. And the reason I did that was I kept preaching about changing the way you work, right? The whole collaboration. I did the whole Center of Excellence at the Microsoft conference, SharePoint conference. And actually, as a contractor, you never actually do the change, right? Because you come in, you tell somebody how to do it, and then you bugger off, right? So I decided to join a company, go perm, and actually do the hard work, try and do the change. So I'm an enterprise architect at Zurich. in a global role, and I cover workforce experience now. So my whole focus is on, similar to Rob's doing the admin bit. But if you work for Zurich, then what's your experience like, right? How do you collaborate? What tools do you use? What devices do you use? How do you connect? And so it's much harder doing the changes in internal and actually getting the change to stick than it is to talk about it as a consultant. I'll be honest with you. Zurich this is more sort of my experience, not necessarily from a Zurich perspective, but we're global. I think there's about 55,000 people. But we're in 210 countries around the world, so it's probably similar to Deloitte. Right? We've got a global footprint, so you have the challenges there with the whole time zone, language, regions, et cetera, et cetera.
Are you guys multi-geo in your footprint with Office 365?
So we're multi-geo and multi-tenant.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, which has its own.
John, just explain to people briefly what that means.
Yeah, so a lot of times, every company that operates in more than one, it can go down to the country level, right? So you can be in Europe and you can be in the UK and Germany. You might have special data residency requirements that are required for your data, right? Office 365, as it comes down into the collaboration tools for things like OneDrive and SharePoint, you can specify based on where you sit in the organization. So if I'm in the US, I can specify that you can spin up an environment in the US that's connected to your tenant overall, but all of my data that I save when I create a new team, when I create a new SharePoint site, my OneDrive site is all stored in the US. Same thing as if I was working with you, Mark, your OneDrive site, your teams, all the stuff you spin up would be in the UK. And we can specify that, and it really works well to solve a lot of the hard things that many other vendors surprisingly don't solve. When you're looking at other tools and similar competitors in the world, they're not even on the same playing field with multi-geo or multi resident files across the world in the same tenant.
That's been an age-old problem.
Yeah, go on.
I was saying it's been an age-old problem with even going back to SharePoint on-prem. I remember that being an issue with some organisations, and as a consultant trying to solve that. So yeah, I can imagine the complexity and the tech behind the scenes to make that happen.
Well, in those days, it was twofold, wasn't it? The first one was about performance of access to resources in the first place and pre-positioning stuff, and then there's also the data residency. But I think from my experience in those old days, data residency has become more and more important with things like the UK leaving the European Union as well. Then data repatriation has become a big issue. It's not just controlling stuff through the US, it's now controlling stuff through Europe. So yeah, we've definitely seen that's more important. So that's why I just wanted to touch on that, because obviously a lot of people watching may not be aware of the multi-geo capability, maybe not representative of the larger organisations like yours. So Mark, I guess from your perspective then, so obviously we've got the guys from large enterprises then, so the sort of organisations you work with in New Zealand, so what kind of work are you doing with them throughout this as well, and what you're seeing there maybe compared to what we're seeing elsewhere?
Yeah, so it's not on the scale of Andrew and Rob's organisations by any means. I work for a company called InterGen. So they are a sort of a child company of a larger organisation based in Australia. I also don't work for, within the IT department of that organisation. So I'm kind of your traditional sort of contractor stroke consultant that would go out on site to clients. So being in Wellington and being the capital in New Zealand, they're mainly government clients, so departments of the New Zealand government. But again, it's a smaller government, smaller footprint. So the sort of departments, the sort of numbers we're talking about are sort of 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 seats, as opposed to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So yeah, it's still a reasonably significant size, but we're generally single tenant here. So I work mainly on the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform side, as opposed to Teams and SharePoint. But yeah, we generally, everything's hosted in a single data center, which is usually in Australia. There is a New Zealand data center coming now, but that'll be a year or two off, I'd imagine.
Yeah, interesting. Cool, good. So what I'm interested in, so I guess from where we've spoken, so from when everyone started going into lockdown, we spent a lot of time over this series talking about how people have adjusted to lockdown, how people have adjusted to working from home, a lot of the mental health issues that people have gone on. Rob, as we said previously, we spoke a while ago. We think that might be 6-7 weeks or something. So I'm curious then. So from going from people entering lockdown and all of the, let's say, excitement, I guess, even of people doing something new, work from home, learning the new way of doing it, the enthusiasm's kind of become more normal over a couple of months. Just tell us some of the story that you found with the people across all of your organisations that we've had over the last 2-3 months, of people have adjusted to it, and where people are at now from maybe when we spoke previously. I don't know who wants to go first.
I can give it a go if you want. So I think we went into it. Actually, we were quite lucky in the fact we'd put a lot of work into collaboration tools, but we hadn't done the cultural change, right? So you probably covered this before. People just shifted, and it worked, and they got used to it, and we were there. And actually, they changed the way they're working without thinking they ever would. I think we're getting to the point now as we're going through it, and we're still in lockdown, right? So in the UK perspective, we're not back in the office, right? As an organization, we're not going back in the office till July at the earliest, right? So we were never fully 100% out of the office. There was some IT staff could still go in, but we definitely put time into how do we assume no one can go to the office? So how do I rebuild a broken laptop, right? So that was something we covered. A lot of work went into that. We never had to call on it, right? So we were good at swarming on things and doing work, but some of the things we didn't need. But people are still remote, right? We're still thinking about what it's like when we go back to the office. Switzerland, they've just gone back, so the numbers are down. But they're very much one on a desk of 4 with little Post-it notes, and the way they do the canteen is different. And some people want to get back to the office. The conversation, they want to get back in, they want to get back to the normal. I think when I talk to my Italian colleagues, they want to get to the hills. They're in the city in a tiny room, and they want to disappear to a holiday accommodation and work on 4G, right? And they say, I just want to get out, right? Go somewhere away from it all, just disconnect completely. They're not keen on going back to the office because they've worked in really, really restrictive environments, right? So Italy, Spain, they've been, compared to the UK, the lockdown in Italy and Spain has been really draconian, I would say. Yeah, we've been able to go out and run. You still get food deliveries, but they were like, no children outside. You're not allowed outside the building. You can only go within 100 yards. You can only take the dog out. You'll get fined if you're away. So there's really restrictive in some of these countries. And I think there's the challenge mentally will be more difficult there, right? As they come out of lockdown. I think, Mark, you can probably talk about what it's like to come out of lockdown, but maybe now the offices have started up. I think New Zealand have declared themselves COVID free now, right? So you've probably got more experience on that.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty early on, there was like a level system that was communicated. So levels 1 through to 4. And which went, level 1 was sort of gradual, some slight restrictions on things, through to level 4, which was kind of lockdown, if you like, where basically only supermarkets were open, and one person was supposed to go out and get the shopping. If you went out and got exercise, you're only supposed to go out, say half an hour from your home or something like that. So it was fairly clear from the beginning, like what the rules were going to be, but we didn't know when we were going to transition through the levels. So organizations, it was like a big, when we went into kind of level 4, and we sort of accelerated pretty quickly there, probably within a week, I would say. And there was like a scramble for, desktop kit, monitors. A lot of people just weren't geared up from home. I kind of take it for granted, and you guys probably do, working from home and having, all of your equipment with you. Whereas I think a lot of people, and especially sort of government employees, are just used to going into the office, and they've still got desktop PCs set up for them and things like that, and an actual physical desk, which is, we'd be, even if we did go in the office, we'd probably be used to hot desking and so forth. But a lot of companies surprisingly just aren't geared up for that. So that was kind of going into lockdown. They were some of the transitions, getting the right equipment. That one of our government projects had check-ins daily just to check everyone was coping from work working from home, which seemed a bit strange for me. It's sort of, let's check the internet's working. Is the internet working for you? And also, even though we're working on 365, and anyway, so we're using those tools. A lot of these organisations have proxies within. So they're kind of, their internet's constrained.
Yeah. You do VPN, and then you connect to the internal, and then you go back out, and it restricts it to the IP range of your VPN.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Everything's 365 locked to devices. They're locked to IPs. So there was quite a lot of admin to get people to even able to connect from home and things like that. So I think they were some of the adjustments going into lockdown that I noticed in the workplace. Whereas as a consultant, for me, who's kind of always had some degree of working from home or traveling, it was kind of going back 10, 15 years even, it was quite a natural thing for me. And it's something that I've felt over the years that should have come earlier, shouldn't have really taken COVID to have a shift in kind of that kind of flexibility in working. I feel that that's they're starting to sink in people's heads now as we come out of lockdown.
So as we come out then, and this is probably the question I was trying to get to is, as we come back out, I've got a perception that we won't go back. We've made this shift now, and we've been there long enough that the people there will be still some people, but most people will go, actually, I can work from home. There's no requirement. I've got to see you sat at your desk to see you're productive. We've been there doing it long enough, and people have produced work that as we come back, I'm expecting more acceptance of, I can be flexible. My kids can walk in the room. I can work the hours to shift. And actually, I need the tech to be able to work from anywhere. And we always did a project, anywhere was one of the things we talked about, right? So any device, any location was something we aimed for. Do you see that now, though, even like with governments, where they're going, actually, this works for us, or not? Are you seeing them go back to the office now as soon as they can?
I'm seeing a mix actually already. So we've been we're basically down to level 1 now, and been since Monday this week. So I'm expecting, organisations to kind of fully embrace that from after this weekend coming. But I've seen a mix of change. So some government organisations are saying, look, we're not ready for you to come back anyway. We've made adjustments in the office, and we're kind of, it's going to be a while before we readjust to that. Our organisation, InterGen, have sort of are currently putting together a new working policy. But in the meantime, they're basically saying, look, when we went into lockdown, your de facto place of work was home, and then you need to let us know if you're coming into the office, where they've sort of said now it's switched around. So we're expecting you that your kind of main place is back in the office. You need to let us know if you're working from home. And I kind of... I was expecting a bit more declared flexibility, if you like, but maybe that's coming. Maybe that's just something they need to put into place to lay some kind of rules down. Because they need to, at the end of the day, they when we were in lockdown, everyone knew where people were working. So I guess companies knew that people were basically at home. Whereas in this hybrid, you can work from anywhere. I suppose an employee still needs to know, where you're working. So it's kind of like, just let us know if you're going to be at home for the next 4 weeks. That's fine. Just let us know. So that's how I'm reading it. And I think that, it's going to be a personal choice for me. I'm like got a family, so it suits me I prefer, a large block of my time working from home. It just saves a lot of time commuting. I get more time with my daughter. I can take her and pick her up from school and things like that. Whereas there's members on my team that are single guys. They live in a flat in Wellington City on their own, and they've been kind of cooped up, and they're desperate to kind of get out and meet people again. And so I think it's going to be a degree of personal circumstance, and that's why I think it should be flexibility to give you a personal choice. So I'm a manager. I've got 12 consultants that work under me, and my take would be, and it's kind of always been really just, I don't mind where you work. Just be responsible. If you need, if something if something works better face to face, then make the call and go into the office. If you don't need to be in the office, work from home. Just let me know really what your pattern is, or put it in your diary or something like that. And that's totally fine with me.
A couple of interesting points there. And first one is, one thing we've found is people are more acceptable. Let's say our working hours are 9 till 5 normally. And I find that through this, people are more okay to email people between 8 and 9 or between 5 and 6 when you typically be commuting, and they'd expect a response at that point. So I'm interested to see if people still send those messages out at that point. You say it's difficult to know if people are at home or people are in the office, therefore some of them might have that commute time, so people may not be available now in those times that we've become used to them being available. So it'd be interesting to see how people expect the availability to be in the instance of response on those times. And another point that's interesting is, we asked the question right at the start, is because we're all bought into this, and we were bought into this before, and a point that was made is, this should have happened a long time ago, and it's taken COVID-19 to actually make the transition for normal users, the people that we always try and help. And it does take this kind of significant event to make that happen as good as it has. One of the questions we asked earlier, and Rob, we probably spoke about this before, is how long will it take for muscle memory to set in? How long do we need to be in lockdown before people do become used to this situation and don't just slip back to how it was before? Assuming it's a good thing, of course. That's a debatable thing as well. So do we feel that we have been in this scenario long enough that a mass of the users are going to retain some of the things that we've learned, or some things they've learned through this? Rob, what do you think from your guys?
No, I mean, I think we're there, right? And I've worked from home. I've been fortunate enough to work from home for 10, 12 years now. But a lot of our people, the way Deloitte works, a lot of our people are on the road every single week, right? So we have to be mobile. They're just at client sites, or were at client sites before. Now they're working from home. But we ended up seeing a huge shift, and there's no way we could have seen. And I'm kind of curious to see what you guys did as well, but in your numbers. But we saw a massive shift in the way people used our tools, right? Because our little admin team, it's not a big team. We're not massive or anything. We've got some people to where we can support around the clock. So we got some people in India, got some people in the UK, got some people in the US. But I mean, it's not a huge team, but I couldn't imagine the type of growth we saw having to support that with an on-prem model, right? Because I think the way people change the way they're working. And I'll give you an example with Microsoft Teams, right? Teams is not really our preferred communications channel, right? So we were using Skype a lot. The US member firm moved over to Zoom, right? So they started using Zoom. So we've got a bunch of these little kind of calling tools, right? That you can select from, and you can use to collaborate with your clients or whoever based on what you need, right? So if you want to use Teams, you can use Teams. If you want to use Zoom, you can use Zoom. So we opened up a lot of extra tools to the business people, the business users, so that they can collaborate in the way that they could be most productive. So we didn't really even promote Teams as hey, you can use this to do calls. I pulled the numbers, and I've been watching the numbers for several weeks now, or since it started. The pre-COVID, so this is like early March, we were doing about 6 million audio minutes per month. So if you look at that, 6 million, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good, uptick. I just pulled the numbers just now. So we went from 6 million early March to today, and this is a month worth of data, went from 6 million, we're at 160 million minutes. And Teams isn't even our preferred. We're not even promoting it as a thing you should do, right? Oh. Yeah. But what we're finding is that people are using the tools based on where they're collaborating, right? So many people are using Teams. We've got about I want to say weekly average about 290,000 people a day, right, using Teams, unique. Yeah. So almost 300,000 people. So what they're doing is while they're in teams and they're collaborating with their team or their whatever, they're using Teams to do their calls, right? Hey, I'm working on this document. Let me just call you right here from Teams. Now, the client side piece of that, we're doing about as many minutes in Zoom, right? So people that are having calls with clients are collaborating with clients in Zoom. All their internal, while they're preparing documents and, doing what they're doing, their internal collaboration is all in Teams. So they're using the calling features of that in there. But I mean, the way it scaled up, I mean, it was just an absolute hockey stick straight up. I mean, to go from 6 million minutes a month to 160 million minutes a month, I've never seen growth like that ever on anything.
And I think then,
I don't think Microsoft has either. I mean, let's also just call out how awesome Microsoft, Google, Zoom, all these organizations. Okay, there's been a couple of minor blips along the way, but they've been minor. When you see growth like that, they really are minor. Okay, we've dropped the call quality a little bit to cope. That's great. But, there's always been the promise of, cloud, elastic scale, or just automatic scale to what you need. We have this perception of infinite availability. But let's be honest, someone's running tin somewhere in these data centers, and they will not be expecting that level of growth, a Christmas peak or something like that, but not to this level. But let's call out how awesome all of the technology providers have been to have actually kept these services going. I think that's been phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, when there's a power cut, everyone's straight on the phone to the electricity company because everyone expects electricity to just happen, and no one kind of pats the company. No one phones your electricity company and say, "Oh, thanks for keeping the electric on for the last month. It's been great." And it's getting the same with IT now. It's like no one, like you just kind of called out giving them a pat on the back basically, but no one does that, do they? No one's said to me before, "Well, Microsoft great for the performance and the scale that they've got." Everyone's kind of expecting it now, which is a bit tough, really. But if you built your own Microsoft Teams environment back in the day, on-prem type thing, and it would have just fallen on its arse, wouldn't it? Really.
Well, I've always told my young developers that it is a thankless job. The best thanks you can get is to not hear from your customers. If you work your butt off, write some code, deliver a project, it goes, and you don't hear anything, it just works.
So one thing I'd call out, I think that we saw for the first time was the business praising IT. In social and videos created, right, and even at an exec level. So I think like we're calling out Microsoft now. I think there has been there's an element of empathy, right, where they're saying in lots of places, but then you go, you know what, actually that was really hard, and it worked, and I'm amazed it worked, and actually somebody had to do that. So I think they're starting to call out that now where they normally didn't. I think the huge shift, and suddenly it just works. I've carried on. My whole team is productive. And we've completely shifted the way we work, and the IT just worked. I think all of the organizations, the providers, but each company has done marvelous things, right? Like you say, Mark, with the government, you've gone from desktops that you've managed to get people at home that never work from home that are up and running within a day and a half, whatever the number is, but in a reasonable amount of time. And we're seeing that, I think.
Well, we had a lot of planning to make that happen, right? Now we experienced the same thing, right? It was the business was. They just carried on. But now that's not taking away from all the planning that we had to do to get them, because we had a lot of pockets of in our business, like, U.S. federal government or, things like that, where they couldn't use the tools, right? Because there's regulatory things or whatever, to where once COVID hit and they're all working from home, they were like, we need these tools. So
we have no choice.
Right? And so we had to turn them on, really quick, but we also had to come up with a plan to do it in a way that made sense, right? So that we weren't just going to turn them on. We also had to understand, well, do you need any conditional access policies and things like that, and really implement a lot of this. So we ended up having a daily war room that we would all call into at like 8:30 in the morning my time, and we would say, okay, what's on the plan for today? What do we need to do? Where are we with OneDrive with this group? Where are we with Teams with this group? Where are we with all these tools, right? And then we would basically chart it out. We would do the work for the day, come back in tomorrow. Okay, what's outstanding? What's new coming up? And And so we were just constantly doing that. So, I worked several, and by several, it was quite a couple weeks of 100-hour weeks, and it was really taxing because it was just a lot of planning work, a lot of, we had to do a lot of analytics and a lot of reporting, all this stuff. And so it was hard.
Do you worry, not a worry, but as we go back, so we become new normal now, right? But there was always a challenge that it takes too long to do anything. Oh, IT is too slow, right? Organizations too slow. And we've proved that actually we can change quickly, right? We can put the effort in, swarm around a problem and do it. And actually, which is a good thing. It's like agile development, composite warfare, right? We can do things quickly, solve problems and get it done. I think in IT, as opposed to the business change, I think organizations and IT departments probably need to think about how they change the way they work to say, we can take slightly more risks, right? We didn't go through all the CR 10-day change process for everyone to review it. We did the change, we fix on fail, right? Then we had a bit of a get out card, right? But maybe there's going to be a push for IT departments to be more proactive.
I think that'd be a good thing. From some of the things that we see in the clients we work with, how slow some organisations go, and I understand why they are because I've been involved in putting those processes in place for enterprise in the past. But I guess it could go too far, and people could just become too gung ho and say, do you know what, actually we did it then, so let's do it now. You're right, they had a get out of jail card. If something went wrong, it's like, well, COVID, we had to try it. So hopefully people have tried it. So it's still got to be balanced with the right level of governance, but hopefully, people realise, as you said, they can just take some more risk, but still temper that with the right level.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, a lot of these processes. This has been an epiphany for me, right? I've learned this, and it just really hit me like a ton of bricks. We have a lot of processes as well, right? So things take time to get in. You've got to get these groups sign off, and you got to do all this stuff to just deploy something, as an example. Yep. Well, those are obviously in place for a governance perspective, but also I think about how much work we had to do working around the clock to make this happen. A lot of these processes also protect our employees from working around the clock to make sure this stuff happens, right? Yeah. So, I mean, while they suck, and I'm the most, let's bypass this process, let's get it done. Yeah. I don't know that I would want to live in a world that I had to work 100-hour weeks, right? Because we do need the processes not only for governance, but also it does indeed protect the employees.
Yeah.
What's the monetary part, then? What's the monetary part as well, though? Because with that, obviously, I guess the businesses are throwing money at this where they wouldn't normally put the budgets there, and obviously having to move that away from somewhere else. So I guess, again, that's not sustainable to constantly. Or people are realising, do you know what? If we do put that excess budget in, then we do get the productivity back. So are you realising value from the spend as opposed to it being a big spend that's not got value?
What about the? Before, COVID, basically a lot of organisations had those kind of really expensive AV systems in their rooms full of kit, and before every meeting it would take like 5-10 minutes to get everything working and set up.
Yeah.
And that and now it's just from home it's basically lift your laptop and dial in. It's like it doesn't you don't have that impact. It's kind of simple, but it still works. So I wonder if when we go back we'll still have those kind of big like you said, Rob, you've got Zoom and you've got Teams as options. I wonder if all those kind of old Cisco style
Polygon
networking systems will still be there, or whether they'll
we've got a bunch of these telesuites where you're looking across the table at the other room and they're life size and they're awesome. They're really awesome. But I wonder, as because we're not struggling with it. We're trying to figure out what our employees are going to do because we want to give them the option of coming into work. Now, there's sometimes you've just got to go visit a client, right? You've got to be on site with the client. That's the deal. But when you're not at a customer site, do you need to go to the office? What does that mean for even the overall real estate footprint that you actually need in a city? Like we have our Deloitte office our headquarters is in New York City, and it's at 30 Rockefeller Center, which is one of the most prestigious addresses you can have in New York City. And, and we've got 30 floors in that building. Do we need 30 floors? I don't know. They're basically empty right now. They are empty right now. I mean, New York's still in lockdown. but
And the business is still running.
Instead of having 30 floors, could we do with 10? Or, I mean, I don't know. That's not my decision by any means.
But does it change? So the AV, I mean, my take on the AV one, and I think we even before this, we were always saying, can we simplify it? So that problem of going into an AV room, the Polycom kit wasn't always used. You just plugged your HDMI cable in, all that stuff. We actually wanted to simplify that anyway and say it's the consistent on my phone, my desktop, the meeting room. If it's the same, I'm going to get more usage. There's still the high-end kit we expected, right? The real high-end kit, all the auditorium stuff. But I think we were going in that direction anyway. I think it might accelerate that. The bit I'm concerned about with the meeting room is interesting is, what does the office look like? Why do I go there? Because you talked earlier, Mark, I've got to talk to somebody. Well, what I don't want is an office with a load of PCs and screens, because I don't go there to sit in front of the screen. I'm going there because I want to talk to people, right? So the socialized bit, that's one. The other one is, do people want to go back to cubicles? Because actually I don't want to catch something, right? So do I go back, if I have to go to the office, can I have a cubicle back, please? I like my space. And maybe, I don't know what it'll look like, right? But maybe there's an element of the offices where you go and think time work because you want to go to the office to work becomes more cubicle, but there's more spaces that are collaborative in nature. But
one thing I noticed here,
yeah. Go on.
Sorry, Andrew. Yeah, one thing I noticed here coming out of lockdown is that there's a feeling here of it's safe again. So that's kind of, I've noticed that contact, people aren't, when you kind of social distancing at once, I thought, are we gonna, when we come out of this, are we still gonna like bypass people on the pavement, at 3 meters or 10 meters or whatever. But yeah, I've noticed that's all just kind of gone away and people have kind of forgotten all of that. And it feels like, we went into Wellington on Friday night, me and my wife for like a drink, and yeah, just the bars were kind of, just as they used to be. So I'm kind of thinking on that front that people will feel, depends country to country, but here I'm imagining that work will, just go back to being open plan. And
once you've opened the bars, they'll get back to, I was in the bar last night, so it's not going to matter if I'm in an office desk, right? But it requires you to open the bars up fully, right, and remove the social distancing recommendation. Yeah, we're still 2 meters in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So you can't open a pub, right? You can't.
Yeah. So I think at the moment they're talking beer gardens, aren't they, where you can have that space where it is outside space. But I am the same at the moment. I feel weird if I'm walking down the street taking the dog for a walk at lunchtime or something, then I do feel strange. So I've got a little visitor. It's actually my dog coming to visit me, not the child. There you go. There's the new normal, the dog coming in. He's not. Let's give him a little hello. There you go. Here's my little helper. So first time he's made a show on the show. So.
Is that a King Charles Spaniel?
No, that's a Cocker Spaniel.
Oh, nice.
So, Cocker Spaniel is a working Cocker Spaniel. Very, very great dog. Absolutely brilliant. Gets poked and prodded and pulled and everything with the kids, and is such a nice family dog. So, really good. But yeah, as you say, Mark, I feel like that at the moment. Like I have formed an aversion to being near people. I'm not even that serious about the social distancing. I am serious about it, but I'm not kind of become agoraphobic for fear of it. I'm kind of okay. Personally, I've not had a test, but I believe me and my wife had it. So we're not worried about catching it ourselves anymore. We're just worried about spreading it to other people. But I do have that natural aversion forming now that I feel I need to give people distance, and I quite like it. And I have that interest now of what's going to happen when we can travel. Are we suddenly going to be nervous walking through airports because of just how busy it's going to be and walking down the street? But interesting you say that people have just very quickly kind of gone back to how they were and actually being happy.
But there's still flights in the US, though. I've seen pictures on Facebook. People are just on planes with their masks on, with people sitting in the middle. We're not doing it in the UK, right? No one's getting on a plane that I'm aware of. But virtually no. I mean, there's some, but essential. So, but no one's getting on a plane, really.
We're flying next month for vacation, actually. So we're not. I mean, we're a little worried about it, but it's. It's just I don't know. I mean, we're opening back up fairly quickly, right? So our bars are not as much open like they are in New Zealand, it sounds like. But you can go to a restaurant. We typically go to restaurants that have outdoor seating. So like our first time was this past Friday. Actually, we went to a little Mexican restaurant, sat on the porch. It was outside. It was fine. My gym's opened up. You can't have more than 21 people in the room at the same time. They test your temperature. They spray you down, with hand sanitizer and all that stuff. I feel like they're doing a good job. We're still trending down as well now. Yeah. That being said, our numbers are trending down right now. We've had some civil unrest here in the U.S. Perhaps you've seen on the TV.
Yeah. It's spread as well. It's spread.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's going to do to our numbers, right? Because I know there were a lot of people, in the protests and things like that, they were just doing what they do, right? And I don't know. I hope it doesn't trend up. I'm afraid it might, because there were millions of people out, most with no masks, marching around. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're still trending down. We're still planning to go on vacation. I've not been to a bar yet. I started making my own moonshine. Don't tell nobody.
No, I've sampled your moonshine before.
but I mean, I feel things are kind of a new normal here. I don't want to say they're back to normal, but they're a new normal. I mean, people are being, for the most part, social distant. When you go to the grocery store, when you go to the hardware store or whatever. I mean, I think people are being respectful, and most people are wearing masks. Some don't, but that's okay.
One thing I think with the respect bit, I think, so where you are in the UK, I find that people are much more patient, right? So we do the queue in, they will wait, right? They're much more patient regarding, conversations or waiting in line, but also online, people are more patient with people. And actually you find people that are more empathetic. So you see posts where people are being really open about, I had a really bad day. And I just think actually it's not negative anymore. And I think that's one of the values we get out of this is there's no judging people for coming out and saying it, right? It's not a negative or a weakness. You go, you know what, I can't cope with the kids, right?
Yeah, like we were saying earlier about the kids coming in, interrupting your meeting and stuff. Yeah. So, I was telling you guys earlier that I was on a meeting call and literally, my daughter tipped a cup of water like this over my head as a prank. And before I probably would have been, I suppose, pre-COVID, more shocked and more mortified at that, as what my audience thought, but it was kind of by that point, even though it was still a shock, it was kind of, the audience laughed about it, and, we kind of carried on, sort of thing. And it was just kind of, everyone's got little stories like that now that, like your dog coming in, it doesn't really matter. It's just part of accepted kind of thing.
It's been the great leveler, hasn't it? No matter where you are, no matter whether you're a C level, whether you're someone lower down, it's been the great leveler. Everyone's got the same issues. You could be a senior manager. You've got kids. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're working from home, your kids are messing around. It's fine. Everyone's in the same boat. People understand.
I like the way so our CEO, and it's sort of regulating company, he says we call it social distancing, but his comment was, he's more socially connected now to the organization than he ever was. It's physical distancing. So it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing is what we're doing. He thinks, he's on the Teams calls, you present, actually everyone's in their home, you can see the house they're in, everyone's on video, whereas before people weren't, right? There's almost an assumption you're going to be on video to present. And actually people are more connected, even a global workforce.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. That's a great perspective that I haven't really considered. That's great.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And talking about the video one, and it's incredible that everyone now uses video. There was such a big resistance beforehand of people turning the video on. I had a call the other day where I had 2 camera sets on my computer and I couldn't get the video going right. And I nearly dropped off the call because my video didn't work. And someone just turned around and says, well, just turn your video off and don't worry about it. Just go on audio. And I was like, yeah, Josh, I can do that, can't I? But it felt weird because it's just become normal to have the video on. And even with our friends, we spoke about this before, but a Thursday night quiz night, just getting the friends together. We don't have to go to the pub, we've got kids, we can't go out. But actually, that's something I hope that we can continue to do. Friends who are all over the country we don't see, we're actually more connected to those guys as well more often because we get video, so the laptop on the TV in the lounge, the big TV there, getting interactive, and hopefully that's something we can keep. So again, as you said, we're more connected as well to our friends as well as our business contacts.
Be interesting to see what the effect has on the cities, like Rob was mentioning earlier about, your kind of office space. Do we need all that office space? And if companies start reducing that, what then happens to the coffee shops and the restaurants in town?
Maybe it's a time for a resurgence of the co-working industry. That's been kind of bubbling under the surface for a bit, co-located offices, a couple of desks in different places. Maybe the space that, large organizations give up can actually be those kind of space where people do want to go somewhere for some social aspect, but maybe closer to home or to have, faster internet. So maybe they just get changed into that kind of space.
I think WeWork have got enough office space, haven't they? I don't think they need. I
wasn't going to mention them specifically, but
as an example, right? In the UK, they reported in the Times, they're saying that people are, once they release the housing market, there's loads of people looking at properties in the country, so going out, but also their requirements have changed. So I want an office is now a requirement, right? Because I've worked from home in my bedroom in the city, right? And actually for the same money, I can get land, I can go walk in the garden, walk on the beach, but I've got an office space. So I can be at home, but so I'm lucky I've got an office because I work at home, right? I've done it for years. And I deliberately bought a house with an office space because that suits me. And I think more people are going to do that, right? Especially when they go and look for my property. Do I buy a little flat in the city? But what you might find, Mark, is the younger people go in the city because they want the connect, right? I think you were talking about, your single males, females who want the physical connect. They're not going to want to go to the country. But you might find a demographic shift. Families start going out more quickly to the countries. Yeah.
I think there'll always be. I mean, I would like to go. It's nice to get into the city, and went in earlier this week and just go back and have a walk around, enjoy that kind of going to grab a coffee and see my friends in the office and things like that. So there will be that connection still. It's just probably won't be as frequent. And here the businesses are kind of trying to encourage government, for example, because there's a huge kind of government workforce here, trying to encourage government to go back to the office. That's kind of the next step I've noticed.
Because it's supposed the coffee shop and the sandwich bar and
to support the businesses there. And I think, I was thinking before we came out that maybe there'll be more local restaurants and coffee shops and bars spring up to support the people that are working from home. So your kind of local village or your local town as opposed to the big city.
So have you seen that? I don't know, Rob, same for you. So because I live in a small town, and actually what we found is people supporting the local coffee shops and things that they're doing home delivery. And they're actually saying it's a bit more expensive, but I'll spend the money because I want the coffee shop to be there after lockdown, and I'll spend the money for them to do my grocery delivery, even though it's more expensive, or I'll buy the cake, or I'll get the coffee delivered. And I think people are starting
exactly the same here. Yeah, so the restaurants that we would normally go to, we're ordering from them for delivery and collection. We've seen the same here. Where I live, a place called Ramsbottom, just north of Manchester, we've got a very good food scene here. A lot of good independent restaurants. There's no chain restaurants; it's all independent. They've got a great name for themselves. We often get voted sort of best place to live in the UK, things like that, because of those kind of things. The community around here is so appreciative of that, and they don't want to lose it. That they have gone and they've ordered that food from those people, and it's actually sustained them really well. And the little sandwich shops, again, they've stayed open throughout, and we've seen a lot of support for local, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested in having come out of lockdown, and also coming out of lockdown a little bit, and also me and Andrew maybe still in the position where we can't do everything we want. What have you learned that you craved? What did you miss? Mark, what's the first thing you did when you had freedom to go into town? Was it to go and have a pint in a pub? Was it a dirty sandwich from the sandwich shop? Or what have you missed? Andrew, what do you miss that you've not been able to have that's maybe surprised you? What have you craved, and what's the first thing you went for?
I haven't probably because I'm not on lockdown, right? And I'm not sure.
Yeah. So what are you craving? What are you thinking? Damn, I wish I had that. As Mark's talking, I'm like, do you know?
There's a big coffee scene in Wellington. It's sort of double shot is standard, and there's kind of there's like I don't know. There's something like the most coffee shops per capita or something in the world or something like that. There's some stat about Wellington, and that's kind of, I haven't been a big coffee person before, but since I've lived here, I've kind of got into that and potentially got addicted. I don't know, but that was probably the first thing I missed, was just like a nice proper coffee, if you know what I mean, rather than just the stuff I made at home, because I haven't got a machine at home, and that may be something that I could invest in. But yeah, just to go there, get a coffee, that was one thing I missed. And I guess whilst we were in sort of level 3, 4, and a bit restricted on the exercise and travel front, I think it's just being able to spread our legs a little bit, and just go for a further walk or travel a bit further. So we're not quite at the flying stage yet. I think there is domestic travel, but I'll be sort of keen to, we like going over to Australia, for example, for our kind of break or whatever. So I'd be looking forward to doing something like that and just go and visit somewhere different. But yeah, the first thing was probably coffee. That shows my age, really.
Yeah, I want to get out in the camper van. Right, we got one last year, and then we did one just before the lockdown went through in March, and we had one booked which we had to postpone. But I just like to get out in the camper van and go somewhere and stop by the beach, camp up.
Yeah, you got quite a cool little
VW camper. Yeah, the old 76. Yeah, that's my plan.
I told my wife, as soon as they open, they're not open here yet, but I'm going to go to a sushi bar and eat like $100 worth of sushi. As soon as they're open up, I'm going to be like, here's $100, just keep it coming until I freaking fall over.
Yeah. So I think as well, so from my perspective, yeah, I mean, it's food, it's eating out. Like I said, we've managed to quench that thirst of restaurant food, which has been quite nice to sustain that. Weirdly, I've been craving a McDonald's. Now I'm seeing McDonald's is open. I don't even eat McDonald's. I can't remember the last time I had a McDonald's before lockdown, to be honest. But now I'm seeing people going through the drive-thru. I'm like, I really want a McDonald's. So that's
for 2 hours in a queue.
When we,
McDonald's, right?
I know. We're going to go. We're going to go on Friday and have a McDonald's, and I'm going to be bitterly disappointed because I don't actually like it, but for some reason that's what I've craved. And as you say, going out as well, we're big outdoors people, just going for a walk. I mean, we've been out, luckily where I live, there's a lot of hills, there's a lot of outdoors, it's easily accessible. We can just walk from our house and go fell walk and things like that. So we go mountain bike as well. I've been very fortunate to be able to embrace the outdoors. I think for me, it's actually being in lockdown, I've been able to embrace more exercise. I always think I need to go for a run, I need to go for a bike ride, but actually it's triggered me to do it. I think a lot of people have done that. It's spurred a lot of people to go out running because they can go out and run. And so I've kind of craved that, and I think I'm going to keep that craving going forward. I really want to just go and sit in a pub and have a couple of beers. We actually, and I don't know if they've done it where you guys are, but I mean, the alcohol laws were pretty strict here. During COVID, they actually opened all the restaurants that served alcohol. You could get to go whatever you wanted. So you wanted, like we would go get a taco and a pitcher of margaritas from the little Mexican restaurant down the way, or whatever, to go, right? And then just bring it back home and drink it. And it's rules like that I think have changed the game. And I don't know if they'll keep them once we open back up, but I hope they do, because I mean, I love to go, sit at a Mexican restaurant and drink some margaritas, but I also like the idea of bringing them home so that I don't have to drive or anything like that. So for us, I mean, little changes like that, I thought we've been able to support local because a lot of the local businesses do that. And we have a lot of, like you guys, Mark, sounds like you guys have a lot of, local non-chain places. We've got an excellent food scene here, and they've really thrived. I don't want to say they've made a lot of money, but I mean, the local people have kept them working, right? And I think that's a good thing. And the whole to-go liquor, or there's an app called Drizzly. I think it's called Drizzly. You can order from a liquor store and they'll just bring it right to your house. It's fantastic. I mean, I don't think I've gone to go get beer or liquor in 3 months. And like I said, in the US, that is actually quite unheard of, isn't it? As you say, my experience of going there as an outsider, it's almost nerve-wracking going and buying liquor in the US. It is. You can feel its kind of resistance. Even going into bars, I just feel unusual compared to being in the UK. But then South Africa went the other way, didn't they? They actually banned alcohol and cigarettes.
What?
Yeah.
I just found this out.
No, they banned it. Lockdown banned it. Alcohol banned completely. Yep.
I mean, you're kidding.
how that didn't cause riots, I've no idea.
Oh,
but
it did, I think, right? But yeah, banned alcohol.
Yeah, it did, yeah. But yeah, that's incredible. But, okay, so just conscious on time, how long we're going. Don't want to keep these things going too long. So I'm just curious, just some final thoughts. So what you guys are experiencing, or what you're planning for going forward, so coming out of lockdown, what are your sort of tips, or what are your thoughts about what people can maybe focus on coming out of lockdown, Mark, maybe from having gone through and seen people reacting, you guys, what you're thinking about for your businesses and what the plan is for going forward. So just some, I guess, tips and tricks and ideas for other people who maybe aren't as big organizations, might be like for us, maybe planning to go back to work, ideas that you have that maybe other people can benefit from for coming out of lockdown, just to maybe close us out.
I think, like we've talked about the plus points of being in lockdown, the new things, the enterprise entrepreneurial things that have come out of this, and so I think, for me, it's like I just really hope that we retain a lot of that, and we don't just go back to that muscle memory of, the 9 to 5 commute, rushing into town and getting into the office and feeling like you have to be there, feeling like you have to be on a meeting, prim and proper, and no distractions, for example. So I think, just take the new out of the box thinking that we've had to do to adjust to COVID, and retain that and take that forward into your lives going forwards, and just don't go back to, just don't lapse back into how things used to be, because there's a lot of pluses and advantages of how we're working now, how we're collaborating, socially connecting. We're not having to spend as much money on fuel. The roads are lighter here, even though people have gone back. So it just works better when everyone's working independently, to individually, if you like, as well, to how they prefer to work, how they need to work, and they're not just like sheep all traveling into the office just doing the same thing. Then it just relieves quite a few social problems as well. So tips.
I think that takes the society as a whole, though, doesn't it? Everyone's got to have that view for it to benefit. So I think we all have a obligation to do that, because if just one or two people kind of keep it but no one else does, then they won't be able to. So I think that is definitely a societal thing that everyone needs to take on. Yeah,
and I think it's for CEOs, for COOs that are kind of thinking about getting back and how things will work when we get back. I just hope that they've realised the benefits themselves, and they're a bit more open-minded about how things are going to work, and give people the flexibility. And if you're a single person in the office and you want to go in town and you want to go in the office every day, that's fine. If you're a family guy, or you just like working from home because it's just more relaxing, just let people have the maturity to make their own decisions, and support them on that.
At the end of the day, it's about people getting the job done, isn't it? That's all that really matters.
Yeah, and that's what's proven. I think the big worry was that let people do what they want and work where they want, productivity will dip. And I think definitely the company that I work for, plus the clients and the government organisations that I work for, have realised that doesn't happen. People are on the whole conscientious, and in fact, like Rob was doing, work more from home on a lot of occasions. So I think, there's a definite realization that's happened, and therefore, I'm hoping that they're going to be a lot more trusting going forwards, and let people make their own choices about how and where they work.
So, for me, I agree with everything Mark said. I think the bit we need to take out of this is that we're able to change the way we work, right? So everyone's able to adapt and change. And I think with all of the, the environment, all of the challenges we've got around greenhouse gas and everything else, that's going to require a radical shift to the way we work, the way we do things, right? Which we don't even know yet, right? Because the numbers aren't, even with all the flights gone and everything else, right? The greenhouse gases, it's not bringing us down anywhere near where we need to get to, right? So in order to reach those targets, actually there's some radical changes to the way people work and the way we get work done and what we do and how we commute and travel and everything else. So I think just people embracing the fact that we can change, right? And just accepting that actually things might be different and it can still work, because I think that'll come at us quite quickly, where we're going to be challenging everyone on that whole environmental piece, right?
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned the environmental piece, because that's the bit I did want to talk about. We've run out of time for it, but yeah, I mean, for me, there's a massive positive there. I agree. We want to keep that and do better on that. Rob?
Yeah, I think for us, everything you guys said resonates 100% with us as well. Both of you guys. And where we want to go in the future is we're only using a fraction of the abilities that we have for our people, right? So this over this next year, I want to keep pushing the boundaries to do things like empowering the citizen developer, right? So going down Mark's route of introducing tools like Power BI, Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate to our people, because now that we're collaborating on a massive scale, we can now take all of the stuff we've learned with this COVID crisis and become much more efficient at doing what we do, right? Using these citizen developer tools. And that's where I want to go, because A, we're licensed for it, and B, it can really help our people. It can really fundamentally change the way we work and how efficient we work.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Right, I think we're on our time there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I think that was a really interesting discussion. I'd be interested to see in the next 3-4 weeks if the UK can kind of follow suit and start easing up a bit more. I hope we don't have a second wave as well, as you said, from the protests that we've been holding in solidarity with what happened in the US as well. So it's definitely something that's gone, but hopefully that doesn't cause a second peak. But I think it's an important message has been spread around the world. So thank you. Let's hope everyone comes out of isolation safely and that we can get back to whatever new normal looks like.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining.
Cheers, Mike. Good to catch up with you guys.
Cheers. See you again. Bye.
Thanks for joining the Isolation Conversation. Visit our website www.thisisattollo.com for latest information, or hit the subscribe button and the like button to make sure you never miss an episode. Whilst you're at it, if you found value in this episode, we'd really appreciate you leaving a comment below or sharing a link to the show with your friends and colleagues, and that would really help us out. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode, and until then, it's a huge thanks from me for watching.